Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, August 2nd, 2024. The complexity of the income tax code. The complexity of the income tax code in the United States negatively affects taxpayers, businesses, and the government. This complexity arises from a number of factors, including conflicting policy goals, frequent legislative changes, and the intricate nature of modern economic activities. While there's an almost endless list of problems with the present income payroll tax system, below is a list of 7 particularly troublesome problems with the present system. The first problem. The present income tax system is not solely designed to simply raise revenue. Increasingly, it's used by the party in power to reward their friends and punish their enemies. It's also used to promote social programs that benefit groups of American taxpayers currently in favor in D.C., and it's also used to induce people to make personal decisions that align with the ruling party's agenda. These goals frequently conflict with each other, leading to intricate provisions and regulations. The second problem. The more D.C. tries to make the income tax fair, the more complicated it becomes. An example is the Earned Income Tax Credit. The EITC is designed to support low-income families, but it involves detailed eligibility criteria that complicate filing and increase error rates. The third problem. Providing tax incentives for specific activities, such as retirement savings, education, and energy efficiency, adds layers of complexity. Each incentive comes with its own set of rules, limits, and exceptions, making the tax code even harder to navigate. The fourth problem. The tax code is constantly being amended and revised. This contributes significantly to its ever-growing complexity. Each new provision, whether it's a tax credit, deduction, or exemption, adds to the overall complexity. For example, the Affordable Care Act introduced tax-related provisions that intertwined health care decisions with tax filings, further complicating the process. The fifth problem. In a report to Congress, the taxpayer advocate stated that the income tax code contains 9,834 code sections, many containing detailed subsections, and a 6-volume set of corresponding regulations. According to a study by the National Taxpayers Union in 2023, Americans will spend 6.5 billion hours collectively preparing and filing their taxes for the current tax season. The opportunity cost of the time spent laboring over taxes comes out to $280 billion, while filers also incur out-of-pocket expenses on preparation costs amounting to at least $133 billion. Now, that total is likely higher, but the IRS has not complied with statutory requirements to assess this cost across its full inventory of tax forms. The IRS is expected to collect nearly $5 trillion in taxes, but above and beyond that amount, American taxpayers have to shell out an additional $414 billion just to comply with the tax code. The sixth problem. Complexity leads to decreased voluntary compliance, as taxpayers may inadvertently make errors or intentionally exploit ambiguities to evade taxes. The IRS faces increased challenges in auditing and enforcement, with high-income returns requiring significantly more time and effort to audit. And the seventh problem, business entities such as partnerships, corporations, and sole proprietorships are subject to distinct tax rules. This diversity necessitates complex regulations to address issues like profit shifting, transfer pricing, and international taxation. In conclusion, the D.C. elites are profiting handsomely from the complexity of the current tax system. That's why they don't really care what kind of problems and hardships they create for the rest of us. They're going to fight hard to keep the current tax system because it allows them to pander to their favored groups, exert control over people's lives, and make a lot of money in the process. If the purpose of the tax system is to raise revenue, then there's a system for funding the federal government that eliminates all 7 of those problems and many more along with them. This system is so simple everyone can understand it, and you won't have to hire a tax preparer. It shows the cost of the federal government on every retail receipt so all of us understand what we're paying and we can all determine if what we're getting in benefits is worth what it's costing us. That helps U.S. companies compete with foreign competitors and not move overseas. That keeps jobs in the United States rather than exporting them to other countries. That permanently establishes the solvency of Social Security and Medicare. That eliminates special treatment for any group of taxpayers. That benefits lower income groups more than the present income payroll tax system does, that allows each of us, not the elites and their minions, to determine the amount of federal tax we pay, and that is the largest transfer of power from D.C. to the people since the Constitution was adopted. D.C. is ignoring the one real solution that allows us to remain citizens and not subjects, the fair tax. The fair tax is simple, it's non-invasive, but most of all, it works. The American people will overwhelmingly support the fair tax if they're given the chance, and all of us will benefit. The solution? Pass the fair tax. Now, why would D.C. pass the fair tax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system and the IRS along with it? There's going to be a vote on the fair tax in the House of Representatives. We now have the opportunity to force all members of the House to show where they stand. They can vote for the present income payroll tax system, or they can vote for the fair tax. They can support the corrupt income tax in the IRS, or they can vote to eliminate it. It can't be any simpler than that. They can hide the true cost of their government, or they can pass the fair tax and show everyone the true cost of government on every retail receipt. And finally, they can support the largest transfer of power from government to the people, the fair tax, or they can vote against it. Now, if members think the fair tax needs to be amended to address a problem, they can propose the change. Don't let them get away with rejecting the entire bill because it has a perceived flaw that can be addressed, and if it's a real flaw, corrected in the final bill. And don't think for an instant there aren't any flaws in the income tax. Help us bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing or investing $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to FAIRtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the fair tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.